Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for the AI panel, and thanks, Anna, for the introduction. I'm Zvonimir, as mentioned, and I would like to, since I'm in a good company, I'm going to invite our guests here also to say a few words about themselves. So we have Boris, Kevin, and Prince here with us. So guys, can you just say a few words about yourself? What do you do?
Hi everyone, I'm Boris Martinovic. I'm a lead software engineer at Eurohertz Insurance, where I mostly do full stack based development. I'm also a PhD student at the University of Mostar, where I base my research on open source AI and the software development side of things in terms of the experience.
Nice. I'm Kevin Dubois. I'm a developer advocate at Red Hat, and basically my focus is on the developer experience. And that developer can be an application developer, but can also be more like a data scientist, right? So the experience for them as well, and helping, open source be a driving factor in AI these days.
Hey everyone, I hope everyone is doing well. My name is Prince Crentsil. I am a senior AI Global Black Belt specialist, technical specialist at Microsoft. I work with a variety of customers in integrating AI solutions in their business infrastructures. I am based in Houston, Texas, United States, and I'm super excited to be here to talk about AI with this great panel. So thank you, everybody.
Okay, thanks guys for the intros. So open source is a big thing. And I would like us to start with this topic since Kevin is warmed up from his previous talk. So maybe we can just explore the part where open source models have maybe caught up with closed ones. So maybe Kevin, can you share us some of your own insights if open source models or open weights models are actually leveling the playing field? If we take a look at the comparison between open and closed ones, the big tech players and companies that open up more, like Meta. So maybe you can share some.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so we've definitely seen the open source models that are getting very close and sometimes even outperforming the closed source models these days. And I think that's an evolution that we're going to continue seeing. And very similar to how it has been in the software industry in general, right? I mean, we've always seen that open source maybe has a disadvantage at the start because there's internal driving forces and a lot of money in certain organizations to kind of kickstart things, and then open source, encourages the collaboration and kind of forces organizations to work together. And we're seeing that in the AI model world too. Where we see now that the acceleration is much faster with the open source models. Now, of course, there's the definition of open source models is still a little bit up in the air, but yes, definitely.
Thanks, Kevin. And when we talk about the big tech companies, so I'm looking at Prince, probably from Microsoft perspective. So you're also contributing a lot to the open source world. So you have open source not just your 5 models; they are like smaller models that are open source, but you also have a bunch of frameworks like Autogen, like semantic kernel. So how do you see Microsoft aligning with this open source world, and what are maybe the benefits of going open with all of this technology?
Yes, for sure. Great question. So Microsoft has dedicated a lot of great work and resources to the open source community. You mentioned Autogen, right? So I'm a big fan of Autogen. It's been in research for a couple of years, and we have a lot of GitHub repo accelerators where developers, like the ones on the stage, can go and play around with it, right? So when we're talking about Autogen, right, I want you all to think of a conductor, right, for like a band or an orchestra, right? There's multiple instruments, and these instruments in the AI world can be seen as different AI models that can overall solve a big complex problem. So when we're thinking about Autogen, we can put it in the perspective of a use case of an ecosystem, an e-commerce system, right? When somebody is ordering something, they might have a model that dictates what's the issue with the order. They might have a model that is dictating the semantic reasoning behind the customer's scenario. And then we might have a model that is also generating auto response. So all of these models are working in parallel. So AutoGen is really awesome when it comes to very complex scenarios. Another one I'm a very much big fan of is Graph RAG. So we all know about RAG, right? Retrieval Augmented Generation, right? So the problem with RAG nowadays is that in the retrieval phase, sometimes you can get a very generic response based on which the query is being triggered by that function. Graph is now incorporating a knowledge graph where the business entity can kind of outline more facts as additional data sources, right? And these data sources can be composed of, you have your nodes, which are your entities, and then you also have your edges, and these are the relationships between the entities. And what this all does is kind of silos and isolates more factual components of that data set that can then also be called outside of the RAG model to that knowledge graph. That, therefore, giving the customer or the person interfacing with the interface a more concrete or solid answer. So these are awesome things, right? And they're continuing to be developed as day goes. And Microsoft is really pushing the community to provide their perspective on it. So I'm very excited to see where the future holds for both of these frameworks.
Great, thanks, Prince, for the explanation about the whole graph rack thing. It's a really awesome thing. It's very new, as you said, and also some of the trends are going into like smaller language models these days. So having smaller, let's say, more specific models that do one task and they do it better than the general purpose generalist models. So maybe Boris, can you maybe tell us your view on the whole trend? So what do these smaller models unlock for us? What use cases? So what's the, let's say, what are the benefits of using smaller models versus just using the vanilla GPT, the big one for everything?
Thank you for the question. First of all, just when you imagine the scenarios that you're going to work in, for example, let's start from RAG. You want to see what the weather will be today, and that will be fine if you just retrieve the weather data from the API, and you're going to get a pretty good explanation from any large language model on what it's going to be, basically, and what you should wear or something like that. But if we go deeper, like if you want to do things like weather forecast, if you want to do a bit deeper in there, then you have to also think of the things that the smaller, more specialized models will do for you, because also you want your language model to be as, let's say, tight as possible and as specialized as possible if you have the very specific need. Like if you're using it as your like glorified search engine, then it's fine, of course. But if it's something that has a very specific purpose, then it should be a bit tighter and more specialized, and that's where the benefits come in. For example, for software engineers, you would want your language model to know the context of your code base. You would want to not only your companies, like even if you're indie hacker, like you did something half a year ago and then you don't remember what this code does, you can ask it for it to explain to you. So there are many more benefits in there than just simply, okay, giving you maybe a slightly better answer.
Thanks,
Yes.
thanks, Boris. Okay.
Yeah, maybe
Please.
I can chime in with another benefit, because a lot of organizations, they're like, okay, these really big models, they get us the answers and then some, but we don't need that many answers. And what we do need is an efficient usage of our resources, right? Because GPUs are expensive, the resources are expensive, the answers need to come quickly. And so a lot of organizations are looking for much smaller, specialized models for their use case. And then they can share the GPU between different models instead of having just one that may or may not do what they wanted to do, right?
Yeah, definitely. And maybe if we take into account having a cloud as a compute pool. So Prince, what do you think? Maybe does cloud computing actually helps us in democratizing the whole GenAI movement or technology for, let's say, smaller enterprises that cannot afford to have a cluster of GPUs or buying, like a cargo ship full of NVIDIAs?
Yeah, definitely. Great question. So, I mean, as it was said earlier, right? GPUs are very important. It's a very important piece of hardware when it comes to the AI modelings, especially in use cases of fine-tuning models for niche or specific use cases. But for business entities or companies, right, that don't want to go that route, Microsoft has supercomputers, right? Not only is that available on the hardware side, but you can also access that via the cloud. You can reserve a capacity or space. In our company, when we talk to customers, we talk all the time about provisional throughput units, right, or reserving a space, right, for a certain amount of allocated time through a contract of some sort, but that way it's more financially reasonable for that business entity, or just to save time and consumption, which is very pivotal today. So I'm seeing a big trend in that, and I'm seeing more and more businesses utilize the cloud method a lot more.
Yeah, thanks. And since we have a developer crowd here, so maybe to shift more into this perspective. How much do developers use actually, code assistants versus general purpose GenAI models? So maybe Boris, you can shine a light on this part. If we take a look at let's say figures from the researchers, it's like conflicting numbers that do appear when you take a look.
So a couple of months ago, I did research with my colleague Robert Rosic, just based on that. And when we asked developers like whether they use AI tools, like first thing you want to know is whether it's used. Most of the people said yes. So that was already a sign that people not only are aware of of AI's existence and they are actually using it. But what was really surprising to me was that almost everyone uses tools like ChatGPT, which are kind of generalist tools. But when we go into the more developer-specific tools, then like 40% of people just don't use any, while the numbers between like GitHub Copilot, Cursor, IDEs, SuperMaven were kind of scattered all over the place, with the Copilot being like the most popular, the most used one. Another thing which was really interesting is that the fact that when you ask people whether they had challenges or issues, many of them said, yeah, I have a challenge with accuracy, with usability, or the code clarity is not that good enough for me. And then when we actually ask them at the end, okay, would you recommend the AI tools to other people? Almost everyone wholeheartedly said yeah, and that was like one of the kind of more conflicting parts of it, because you would expect someone who mentions the issues and everything, and then in the end they still would like to say to everyone, yeah, please use AI tools. It will help you. Like even if they do the most tedious tasks for you, it's something that's done easier for you, and you should take every advantage that you have, basically.
Yeah, thanks. And let's just take a look at the like elephant in the room, which is called fine tuning. So you mentioned a lot of like add-ons and whatnot, but they are still using the vanilla model that's like general purpose one, or even a smaller one, but still like it doesn't know the context of, for example, your code repo, your code project. So this is maybe a question for everybody here. So how do you think that fine-tuning helps, and if it actually is a feasible solution nowadays when we have a huge context windows as a trend, and we have some in-context learning going on, so copilots can pick up more of your code that's like opened up, or it can scaffold your repo or.
For sure. So fine-tuning is very important, and we're going to see it become more prevalent as time goes by within this AI journey. I previously was working on a side project in the medical industry when it comes to contagious diseases. I kind of was using, a very large LLM, general one, that was just pulling all types of data, right? But what I realized is that some of the outputs that I was receiving wasn't really siloed or isolated to the question questions that were being prompted into the model. So from there, I came to the realization that, okay, cool, I have to fine tune a model and I have to retrain this model on the specific data set when it comes to these contagious diseases. Maybe it does take a lot of processing time for this model. So that's why I said earlier, the hardware side is very much important, whether you're on the, going through the GPU side or via the cloud side. But it is very much, we're going to see a lot of it more when it comes to very niche or specific use cases, especially when it comes to isolated data instances.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. Maybe can you, since just had a talk around customizing the LLMs, and it was very interesting. So maybe also you can share your perspective on how actually how hard is it to fine tune a model? Which phases of the whole process are crucial ones? I mean, obviously we have the data preparation and everything, and then after that we can jump on using some different platforms for the purpose or different tools. So maybe your perspective on this.
Yeah, I think especially for developers who aren't data scientists, like that barrier to entry to, like actually fine-tuning a model is currently very, very high, right? I mean, you basically have to learn a whole new field, and that's not really feasible. But, we have benefits of fine-tuning versus, using RAG or whatever, or, adding this context, is because we want to, for the most part, have do it once instead of we can add it every time, but that's not really feasible. So how can we help developers or users in general with fine tuning? So that's where the project that I mentioned in my talk earlier, InstructLab, is an interesting example of a way to democratize working with LLMs, not necessarily building a full-on LLM. I think that's still going to require quite a bit of expertise. But I think the fine-tuning part can definitely become more open, providing, easier ways to define, like here's what I want out of my new, kind of my context. Here's example questions that I think are relevant. Here's some data that you should use. And then basically by adding, a few structured data fields, you can fine-tune a model that, is going to use, its own kind of way of synthesizing the data and everything. But still, that's kind of not onto the developer anymore to do that. So I think that's, there's a lot of potential there with projects like that.
Thing that I would like to chime in is maybe that we as developers could be maybe a bit more creative in tackling the problem when looking for a solution than instead of looking for the fine-tuning part. I have a really nice example from the medical field where to detect breast cancer, they didn't go very deep into looking into the data, but they simply compared the left and right breasts, and then at the differences, you could pinpoint where cancer could appear even 5 years earlier. And the solution was much simpler, much cheaper, much faster than maybe looking into the whole mammogram or analyzing it deeply. So there could be many problems which could be solved in a bit more creative way or a quicker way, which will also end up being cheaper and maybe safer in the end.
Yeah, nice. So maybe if we take fine-tuning aside, so maybe we can also take a look at what are the challenges of integrating the GenAI into typical developer workflow, the whole life cycle of a software. So maybe Boris, maybe also you did a research. I mean, a lot of researches as a part of your thesis, I think. So maybe you can also chime in on this. So which parts do you see that are most challenging? Obviously, code assistants are there. This use case is explored, it works, but maybe other stages are also more challenging than just writing the code.
Definitely. So even with writing the code, it's not always clear, because sometimes if you have a longer-term product which lives for 5-10 years, and then you have some things in the code base that someone did like some time ago for some very specific use case, very specific reason, and then your language model will also take that into account, and it will not know whether it was done for a good reason or a bad reason, of course. But of course, even beyond the coding part, there are many places where we could look into. So, for example, optimizing our CI/CD pipelines also as well. So maybe some parts it can also GenAI can also help us in creating maybe a more optimized way of deploying our code. Maybe especially if we have some very complicated or convoluted methods that we did also, for example, some time ago. It could help optimize without us really dedicating a huge amount of time, maybe, to that solution. And also, maybe in the parts of research, like for the different business use cases, where your client might not provide you the full info or the full context, or they maybe say something completely that might not end up working at all. And there you could also use them as your like search helpers as well, not only in the context of like outside use of AI or so on.
Yeah, I also wanted to add to what Boris just stated. Another thing I've noticed, right, when it comes to developers integrating AI into business use cases is that I think it's very prevalent as developers that we seek transparency in what we're developing AI-wise, right? We have to make sure it's regulated and it aligns with ethics and governance. So that way, we as the developers, right, whoever we're representing with business unit, is not held responsible for any type of abuse of AI, and making sure it is fully regulated and, you know, it appeals to both sides in the most useful way possible, without, you know, putting anybody at risk.
I found the CI/CD example interesting too, because I was talking to Carlos, who did talk about progressive delivery earlier, and we both talk about this topic quite a bit. And at some point during this progressive delivery, what will happen is your rollout will look, well, you define basically what determines a successful rollout, you know, so based on certain outcomes, if you have 500 errors or something. But right now, this is something that you have to define as part of your rollout. You have to define this is the success criteria, and this is, you know, a failure or whatever. And that's a really interesting use case where we can use GenAI as well to actually determine much more easily whether a rollout is successful or not. Because as you know, as a developer or as a platform engineer, it's very difficult to think of all these kinds of cases that might or might not define a successful case. So I mean, that's a very specific example, but there's so many use cases out there that I think we have not fully explored that can really make our lives a lot easier.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the adoption is currently, you know, the buzzword in GenAI world, definitely. So a lot of use cases, as you mentioned, is being explored, and for let's say a year now, we have been, you know, trying to integrate in a lot of places. And maybe Prince, do you have maybe some insights of, you know, what have you found that works the most? And what are maybe the challenges in which like market verticals, in which industries have you seen maybe the biggest possibilities for the adoption of GenAI tools, other than just, you know, like for us developers, you know, in the whole code assistant and the whole SDLC. So maybe where have you found, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Great question. So I can give my perspective as a Microsoft standpoint. So we've worked with a variety of different business customers, right? So whether it's the banking industry, we've worked with, you know, predictive analysis. We've worked with fraud detection, aviation industry, right? Using Azure function triggers with generative processes. Oil industries. I recently just finished a project with our director. She's in the audience, but with Occidental Petroleum, and they wanted to use Azure their AI vision to look at our Darwin Basin, to search for hazardous items, and then propel that information as triggers with AI into their Power BI dashboard. So you're starting to realize that AI is about to fully integrate itself into a variety of many businesses in the next ongoing years. So one thing I'm looking forward to see an expansion is education, the education system, right? The future generations, the children growing up right now, seeing AI kind of propel their education to a different level. Governance, right? How the government can also use it to kind of level the field of civilization and help people, everyday people, workers, and whatnot. So you're starting to see more adoption coming from that standpoint as well. But for the most part, we are going to see a major shift in every business unit using some type of AI to automate a certain process in their business.
Yeah, thanks for the insights. And since we are looking at the future and we are like running out of time here, let's just for the last part take a look at the next big thing. OpenAI has released the O1 recently, so maybe with that in mind, maybe all of you can share some of your opinions on how do you think the field is going to evolve till the end of this year, or maybe I mean it's not like having a crystal ball or anything, but maybe you see some directions from your perspective. Where are we going with this? Is this the next big thing, the reasoning process, or is it something else? Maybe Boris, can you start?
For sure, thank you. I think that lately we've seen more and more AI tools, very, very different ones, integrate into our lives. So each week you can see something which piques your interests, which you might find interesting or really useful. So it definitely, during the time, we will see more and more use cases of AI helping developers ship faster. And I think, as Kits has said today, indie hackers and indie developers or very small teams will be able to find much bigger productivity boost than maybe the bigger teams, while also even legacy companies or huge enterprises will also find many uses for AI tools in their lives. So it's not just something that will be kind of like for people who are extremely enthusiastic about it, but it will become a norm in a way in our lives as developers. So whoever is not using any of AI tools here, please, I really suggest that you try out anything, like at least start from the chats and move on to something else, because there are many different also free tools, open source tools, and it's kind of a waste to not at least try something and see what they offer.
Thanks. Kevin, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think we're going to continue to see open source kind of become prevalent in AI as well, like I said before. But I think like you were saying, in the traditional businesses, the enterprise, the government agencies, I think there's a lot of potential to leverage AI to, kind of get rid of, or not get rid of, but optimize, sorry, the processes in a way that people can focus on bringing a lot more value to what they're doing, right? Because right now there's a lot of kind of, I don't want to say bureaucracy, but something like that in the IT processes, but overall in these organizations, that I think AI can kind of make a lot more optimized, and then people can focus on solving real problems for us as a society, but also, let's say, in the medical field, right? In the medical field, leveraging AI and being able to, for example, detect cancers 5 years earlier. There's so many use cases out there that I think is super exciting in terms of, I honestly think if we do this right, our lifespan and the quality of our life can vastly improve thanks to that too, right?
Thanks. Prince, your opinion?
Yes, two things real quick that I'm looking forward to. There's going to become more business units in every business focusing on the AI automation process in that business. So that does mean there will be more jobs dedicated to individuals who are seeking to pursue a career with AI. The second thing I'm also looking forward, everybody is, screaming AI, AI, AI. In the future, AI is going to be the foundation, and you're going to have a lot of innovation surrounding AI. So you're going to see more things like AGI, right? AI, AR, all these cool concepts are going to start coming to fruition. So what this means is that I believe anybody in this audience or anybody watching this, if you're a creative, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're anybody that just wants to solve a problem that you see in everyday situations, I think AI gives you that chance to do that. And I think, you're going to see a lot of people creating cool concepts that help people, everyday people, and make life easier in some way or some fashion. Thank you.
Thanks, Prince. And for the end, I would just like to thank Boris, Kevin, and Prince for joining us here. It has been a pleasure. We have explored a lot here, a lot of concepts. And if you want to talk more with these guys or with us, you can find us here somewhere, on the conference. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.